Actually, I like always a possibility of being at a disadvantage in the sense like first when we were told that we have to make the films on the phone, it was like I wasn't sure because I felt I have moved kind of ahead of that and stuff like this. But at the same time, because we are independent filmmakers, I've always thought that, like lose your disadvantages as your strength, sort of a thing. Like your weakness has to be turned into your strength. And I think that's where like all of us kind of came together and kind of explored the iPhone as a medium of storytelling, especially in the short format, because it was very liberating actually. Because in the features, what happens is the stakes are too high. So you're bogged down with so many things. But what we all really want in life is to be liberated, and I think this kind of allowed that, making this short after having done a feature.
I would love to know if you can recommend just a few films for our viewers.
मुश्किल क्वेश्चन क्यों पूछते हैं यार? There are 4 filmmakers here. I recommend all of their films very, very. Really, I mean, you watch Placebo and you watch About Love and between Nimto and Guras, and I think these are the kind of, I think sometimes as a young filmmaker or an aspiring filmmaker, we tend to get fascinated by the Tarkovskys and the Bergmans, and that intimidates you. I think it's very important to look around you what is happening, because that's not intimidating, because you see people are if they can do it, why can't we do it kind of attitude.
When we sit and when we begin to complain that there are no producers, then you think that when you see Fitzcarraldo, you start to realize that him speaking to you, that if there are no producers, become a producers. If there is no festival, become a festival. If there is no equipment, get an iPhone and you shoot it. So it's just, this becomes one of those films where it becomes a therapy.
All right, Prateek, Archana, Faraz, Saurav, thank you so much for joining. I'm Harshad, this is Hona. And
Hello.
we are both so glad to be joined by all of you. I was just telling you guys, like, phenomenal films, of course, goes without saying. And all of your films blew me away. I think what a phenomenal initiative, first of all, to encourage more filmmakers to really just pick up their phones and start making films. But also to tell them and to let the world know that great stories can be told irrespective of the medium, irrespective of the resources that you have, and it is possible in today's time. So thank you so much. First of all, I think I want to let's just clap for them.
Yes,
Because they really
absolutely. Absolutely. To create such like explosive, really, all of the landscapes, first of all, as you were saying, such different landscapes, all of the stories so explosive, all of them went in directions that you do not think they will go in.
Yeah.
And they just managed to take you with them, which is just brilliant.
Yeah. I think, of course, because all of you, of course, come from like a feature film background as well. You guys have, of course, every filmmaker wants to make feature films, but just let's talk about the short film medium for once. For you guys to come from like a feature film to now making a short, how is that transition for you? And what are the challenges that you guys personally feel come from the short film medium? And also, what are the perks of the short film medium? I think, Prateek, if we can start with you.
I'm saying at the film school, we started off with short films, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 8 minutes, 11 minutes, 20 minutes. So we are coming from that kind of learning. So actually doing that again after a while was like coming back home, Now I feel equipped to do a diploma film. I say that because I've tried many times when we were studying and it didn't happen because we just couldn't get the grammar correct. We were writing too long scripts and trying to crunch them, and there was no rhythm to the films. And the best films were those could manage a certain kind of rhythm and weren't getting shackled by the script. So I think those kind of questions, sort of just looking at it after doing the feature films and the docu-feature, it's liberating in a certain manner because it's not, everything doesn't have to tie up, and no resolutions have to be necessarily arrived at. So those kind of things like really help us sort of think openly about the screenplay and even sound design and things like you just open up the film a little more because you're showing a vignette of these 20-25 minutes, but you try to open up a world, what a short story does essentially. So that was a nice thing to do, and also it just thoda khul ke banate hain. I felt it just with feature you're just bothered about too many things and you're just afraid of making mistakes. You're just conscious of thinking yourself. Here it's a little more intuitive, at least for me. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's that.
Archana?
Actually, even I like started making shorts as a way to educate myself about films, trying on different mediums and stuff like this. So actually I like always a possibility of being at a disadvantage, like in the sense, like first when we were told that we have to make the films on the phone, it was like I wasn't sure because I felt I have moved kind of ahead of that and stuff like this. But at the same time, because we are independent filmmakers, I've always thought that, like lose your disadvantages as your strengths, sort of a thing. Like your weakness has to be turned into your strength. And I think that's where like all of us kind of came together and kind of like explored the iPhone as a medium of storytelling, especially in the short format, because it was very liberating actually. Because in the features, what happens is the stakes are too high, you know so you're bogged down with so many things. But I think what we all really want in life is to be liberated, and I think this kind of allowed that, making this
Yeah.
short after having done a feature, because now we were kind of free of that. We were kind of more playful, I think so. And like when the budgets are small, the stakes are small. You don't have this crazy timeline pressure. Like I think all of us have finished making our films like within 3 months, from scripting to delivery, sort of a. So that was kind of very different to deliver the film so fast with About Love. Like I took 5 years to finish that film. So that was a different experience, definitely. Like
Yeah. Paras?
I feel that cinema started with short films. The first films that ever the humankind made were short films. So it's not like either of us shifted from feature to short or short to feature. The thing is, we were always consuming short films. It all
Right.
started with one reel film or a 1 minute of film, and that later, like, there was a need. People really found that medium of art really engaging, so they thought, like, why can't we have longer films? And then eventually we had feature length, and which also means that when we were making short film at the inception of cinema, we all had that curiosity to experiment, and the stakes were very low because we were not burdened with things like distribution and the economics of making the film, but rather it was the wonder. Now when we shift, like personally I shifted gears from feature and not doing short, the best thing that happened, that I didn't have those kind of burdens on me, that how it will be distributed, how it is going to be perceived, or how it is going to be judged. I felt that I was a kid in a candy shop given an iPhone, and I could just go and freak out, and here I have a story to tell. So this urgency of telling the story and economizing time, I think that was really really rewarding for all of us, because short films happen because we have short stories to tell, and the format of short stories are very different from from like a feature length, just like how feature length are different from anthology. Each character gets lesser time. You don't really have so many recurring events in the film, but all of that ties down, and then towards the end of that 1 minute or 30 seconds or whatever the length of short film is, it makes sense. So for me, it's really exciting because it feels like there is more freedom. I can just play around a lot, and it's so much fun to just economize your narrative in certain time and then stick to it and then explore.
Saurav?
I think the last short film I did before this was like 2015. So like 9 years coming back after, like I thought, I can do it. Like having been made two feature films in a span of like 4 years. But I realized like it just in a feature the canvas is big. But in short, like again the preciseness, the rhythm has to be kind of calculated in certain sense, like despite of however one might be intuitive. So yeah, again I was like back into the drill of the make it happen, like. But I also, one thing I realized, the effort remains the same irrespective of small format or large format. That's what I was shocked into. Like the first feature film I did, Invitation, it was like we shot it in a matter of 9 days, and we did repatch of 4 5 days. That is small patch. Here also, like we did a main principal shoot of 9 days. So for me, that was like getting into it took same effort,
Hmm.
So so that was the kind of a kind of a comparison, or I was getting back into. But yeah, nevertheless, of course, the short film as a whole itself, it's a very liberating. Like for us, associated well enough. We were not there with the burden of let's crack it over there. Let's send it over there. We knew that. So the fun part was always there.
Hmm. I think Soumya has joined us. No, congratulations on the film, first of all, and also on
Thank
this
you.
film. I really really enjoyed your film so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were just talking about the just the experience of making a short film, especially in today's time, especially on an iPhone. How was that whole experience for you? Could you just talk a little bit about that, and especially the challenges that possibly come with making a short film in today's time?
Um, I mean, one thing that this really brought me back to was being a student in a way, because there's a lot of it's also liberating to work with a shorter format, and you can be so much more spontaneous without having the burden of an entire longer schedule and so on. But it is a very different medium from a longer format to find
Mm.
a kind of a, uh, a a story that can be told in a very short format, where you actually don't have that much time to have a subplot and so on. So um, it it was a very different approach to say the feature that I'm doing. But for me, it became just about like our story is just about a shift in perspective, and it's not really dramatic in the sense of something happening, but it's a shift in a realization of a person, and we try to kind of weave a story around that.
Hmm.
On Yeah, so it was, but which you can do with a short, because you're not developing a whole narrative per se. You can just take a moment, and that moment of a character changing his perspective on something like fatherhood. So we just kind of tried to explore a very small psychological shift.
Hmm. Soumya, I think I would just like to, take this conversation forward with you, especially because you have worked as cinematographer for such a long time. You of course you also worked with Pratik on Baleo and so many great films.
Okay.
How do you see this new shift happening today with so many young filmmakers and even some experienced filmmakers using their phones, because there's also a lot of condescension around this, right? A lot of people have a condescending attitude about the fact that anyone can be a filmmaker nowadays, everyone has a phone. How do you see it, especially as somebody who's worked behind the camera and with cameras for such a long time, and now we have a phone which is accessible to everyone, and you can just pick it up without really any prior great understanding of the visual medium or the camera itself, and you can still make a film.
I mean, I think the it's an entirely new medium in a way, because it's like shifting from celluloid to a digital camera. So I think in the initial periods, people are still using the digital camera like a celluloid camera, and you kind of fall back on what was before. So in a similar way, I think we're trying to use the cell phone like a digital camera now. But I think what I'd be excited about is that I think just the size of it, just the accessibility of it, it opens up possibly a new kind of storytelling. That there's something unique about shooting with a phone, which is not possible with a bigger camera, and not so I think that we just for all of us, it was an exciting new venture into how to tell a story with a phone.
Hmm.
But I think we're still uh, um, you know it takes time to move out of what of thinking of it in the same way that we've been used to. So that way, I think it's going to open up a very different kind of storytelling, which is, maybe closer to, a very first person narrative, maybe, like, because it's the camera's in your hand, and it could there's a much more there's an intimacy that is allowed by the phone that is not possible with a bigger camera. Um, so in that way, I mean, I think there's one using the phone as a viable alternative and a cheap alternative to bigger cameras, and to tell, a cinematic storytelling with something that's in your pocket. So I think that's definitely one thing that enables and is very exciting for people. But there's also, I think, uh, time to relook at how can we tell stories very differently with this medium,
Hmm.
which which is a difference in medium. It's not the same as shooting with the camera. It's shooting with the phone, and what kind of storytelling does that enable?
Hmm. Do any of you have any thoughts about it? Archana, Prateek, Faraz, Saurav, would you like to add to this conversation?
I mean, I feel that he spoke about intimacy, and in particularly my film, because it was mounted in Kashmir, and I was in the remote village of Kashmir, further ahead of Badgam and Dood Patri. And I've often seen this even while shooting my first film in Allahabad with people who are like cast from the street and who are facing camera for the first time. Sometimes it's very, very intimidating for people to face camera, and when you're working with a cast that is not trained, and you are trying to construct a certain kind of realism or naturalism in your film. But what happens that the ways mobile phones have penetrated into rural parts also, it brings a sense of familiarity for people. So once when they are facing a traditional equipment versus when they are facing an iPhone, it's a big difference because there's a sense of familiarity, and hence it lends to comfort. Like I have seen, I would compare it. The only comparison that I had would be my first film. So when I had like a big equipment, and I would put people in front of it, like certainly people would think that they have to bring a lot of histrionics, like there has to be this big performance and there has to be a dialogue, because that's their understanding of cinema, and I can't hold them accountable for this also. It's really fair. But over here, the moment they saw a cell phone, they thought that, oh, it's just matter of life, it's just it's just slice of life, and the stakes are really low, it's just a quick job, I just have to stand and do an interview and then go. So it, particularly in that regard, it helped me really a lot with my film, because people were really, really chilled out in front of the camera. They didn't have this big camera fears staring back at them.
That's a very interesting point to add, though, because right now we have this conversation going on around vertical filmmaking and whether we should consider this to be a proper format of filmmaking at all. And a lot of people find that to be, not quite acceptable because of the very opposite thing of what you just said. The kind of comfort that a lot of people have with the phone allows them to be much more natural or organic in front of the camera, which is, I mean, that's a very interesting way of looking at it. Because I think right now the conversation is going in pretty much the opposite direction. Because the medium is being democratized and pretty much anybody can pick it up. But this is such an interesting point to add that, I mean, people are just themselves in front of the camera when it comes to like phone cameras specifically. Yeah.
Actually, I think for your films, like for all of your films, as far as I could understand from the casting as well, I think most of them were non-actors, right? Except for maybe Prateek's film, I think that was some heavy acting, I think that was needed there. And of course, I recognized Amir Aziz. But besides that, I think for most of the films, the people who acted in the films were not, and also in Soumya's film, of course. I think even that required some heavy lifting. Was he an actor, Soumya?
I mean, done films before. He's done a lot of short films before, and we'd worked with both actors in the feature. So they'd
Right.
already acted in our feature as well.
Okay. Okay.
Um, yeah, but his wife is not. She works in theater, but
Oh,
not so
theater.
much in film.
She was
Yeah.
also very good. But I would love to know, especially all of you who worked with children, Faraz, Archana, and Saurav. Also, it's very interesting that did the three of you talk about the fact that you were all making films with children as protagonists, or did that just happen coincidentally?
We all were in touch. We were in touch right from the first day because we realized that we cannot do this all by ourselves. We had to share notes. Um, and of course, like, I mean, there's science to filmmaking, and then there is this spirituality to filmmaking, like, the what you feel on set and how the things unfold for you once you reach there, and the happy accidents happen, and then all of that. So right from at the beginning, I think we were just sharing notes on some of the problems that we were facing, because even for our DPs, it was an absolutely new medium that they were jumping into, which was shooting on iPhone. So they had to first figure out the native ISO, then we had to figure out the NDs, and of course, like, talking about kids, Archana had called me once, and she spoke about the kid that she had in a film. Then I had a chat with Saurav also. I remember Saurav called me towards the end of the shoot, and Saurav, I think you should narrate that better, because it's a really fun story, because Saurav shot with this little cute girl in the film for the second time. She's also there in his feature, and he was really surprised because he had not tested her, and he was shooting with her for after a very long time. So when he first met her, he was like really surprised to see her, because she had grown in that time period.
Yeah, and like I remember calling Faraz, like, this little girl, like, she featured in my second feature film. So here she was with like a little grown up with nails and lipsticks and all. I was like taken aback. Like, this little girl who I worked with 2 years back, had totally grown up. And like, Faraz, I don't know how to handle her, because I've excessively worked with male, like, small, like, boys, but she was the first female, like, who I worked with. And I always felt like I was not directing her, she was directing me instead. So yeah, that's what I was like very amazed, and I was very surprised, shocked, and I was just saying same thing. But like, yeah, back and forth, we were, I was the first one to go for a shoot. So everybody, like, especially they was like, "What do you feel? How do you think it went?" Like, I used to share my notes, like my experiences, and I think it happened in the post as well. Like, how is shaping up. The one lucky accident I like we extremely feel glad is, like, when it came for poster, how Faraz and his partner Amrita came on board, like, designed all the lovely posters, and we were like, it was so beautiful. So
Yeah.
yeah, there were a lot of things, like, all the process. Yeah.
But how was it to Archana? I think for you, have you worked with children before?
Yeah, actually, the thing is, I used to assist Amol Gupte. So was assisting on this film called
Mm.
Stanley Ka Dabba. So we worked with children actually a lot. Before my first three short films were children films also.
Okay. Okay.
And no, but the thing is, like, I've realized also I come from documentary practice, right? So the thing was that my script had a very expressive child, but I kind of had to change that once I went there, because I was like, oh, this child is not expressive. He's more introverted, shy, like, like closed up and stuff like this. So I decided to change my character to suit that really.
Hmm.
And like in documentary, we always do this, that you go with this idea, but then whatever is happening surprises you and you have to accept it, really.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that even I went for. I was like, first you were trying to make him act, which was not really happening. So then after we were like, okay, now just let him be, let him do his own thing, and we'll kind of incorporate that into our into what we are doing.
Hmm.
Uh, but thankfully, like the other additional cast who were in the background and stuff like this, they were very good, like
Hmm.
they were really natural actors, so that kind of really helped. And but I have shot half the film very documentary like, and half the film is very fiction like. So it's
Yeah.
only when he loses his phone that it turns into this completely fiction narrative. And before that, I have shot very documentary style also,
Yeah, true.
very observational and stuff. So I wanted to make this. It's only after I met the child, and he had such an interesting face, really burned by the desert, you know. So honestly, I casted him for that reason. And he's the same kid who kind of had sold me beer when I was on vacation in Jaisalmer. So
Wow.
that's what I kind of incorporated into the story. So it wasn't like he was doing something that was unnatural to him that he does on a daily basis. We just incorporated what his real life is really like
Hmm.
into the film, really.
I was seeing the comments on some of the short films, like some of your films on YouTube, and I think people from their families have commented that it's. Did you guys see that? Yeah, their family members have commented that we are so glad to see our child in the film and stuff like that.
Oh, wow, how cute.
So nice to see.
Yeah.
But Prateek, I loved your film. I thought that it was so interesting also in terms of how intelligently, I think this goes for almost all of your films, that you have very intelligently tried to incorporate um, like your own politics into it. It's not, of course, it's not like you are shouting it out. It's not like you are uh, packing it in a way that it is explicit in any way. It is very implicit. It is very subdued, but at the same time, it's so powerful. Would love to know if like how long you've had this idea for of Jaltu Jalaltu. Was it after you got involved with this project that you decided to write this? You had this idea in your mind, or was this a script that you've had for a long time?
I wish I had scripts for long times and which could be just that. But yeah, this story was very. Me and Shubham both have had this story. We've engaged this story quite a bit in doing different things, scene works with actors and stuff like that in various workshops. So, but we've always found it hard to sort of figure out how to do this, and it's a lot of stories of Chekhov are like this. Everybody you meet, everybody wants to do an adaptation of the Bet, but somehow it never happens. So that was one concern that we had, that something has to be done, because Chekhov is so powerful as a writer, and what he professes and his politics is so you know inside the stories, and it has a profound psychological effect on the characters. It's not just politics, which is a polemic kind of politics of for against this and that. It's just about these flawed characters which are a logical conclusion of their environment. And I think that is something we were trying to figure out of how to do that. And in a world where we just figured, because we had to rewrite the story basically. It wouldn't work if it was, because it's set in the early 1900, 1910 or something, if I'm not wrong.
Which Chekhov story is this based on?
It's got different names. It's called The Sneeze, or Death of a Clerk, or Death of a Civil Servant, depending on the translation you read. Yeah, humor became important, drama became important, and the politics became important. And sort of the story lent itself to the politics, and that's why it's a little in your face. There's nothing subtle about the film, and it tops up with that song in the end, because it is like that. Now you've seen the film. Now this is the, how do I say, curtain call, or this is come and join us in singing this song kind of a vibe. So that is, I think, what was the driving force, just to how to engage with this Chekhov writing, and why do we like it? Why 100 years down the line we're still liking it? That was 1910 Russia. This is 2024 India. Why is it still relevant? And how do you make it relevant? It's that is the important part. I think that is, sometimes we take stories and then the film gets overpowered by the stories of what you're trying to adapt. So that we didn't want to do that, but we also know that means tinkering around with a great author, and we can be crucified for that, but that's what you do. So that was good. And I just want to come to somehow touch upon what you asked about the vertical format and the phone and this and that. All of these concerns are there. You're figuring how to write a script and what the constraints are. And about it offending people, I think democracy offends people. It's a basic thing. Any kind of democracy will offend people in the beginning, because more people are doing it. They are not bound down by language or the grammar. And diversity is scary for people, especially people who are entrenched in power positions. Diversity will always scare them. If more women make film, it'll scare them. If more trans people make film, it'll scare them. If more Dalits make film, it'll scare them. So that is, I think we should. And there's this great thing about articulation, right? We should talk about what people are talking about rather than how it's being articulated always, because I think that comes from a very this kind of higher art, and cinema is high art, and that kind of a debate. So 9:16, 4:5, 3:4, 4:3. Personally, I don't give a fuck. It's just about, is it natural to what you're doing? Because these are debates which I think since 1895, when cinema came on, it's been there. And it's music and all these things are 5,000 years old. We are 150 years old. So there is no rule. The medium is evolving, and it's so entrenched with technology that these questions are never going to go away. Be it 35, 16, super 16, wide gauge, narrow gauge, television. It's the same debates. And I think as filmmakers, personally for me, I like to witness these conversations, but not necessarily always participate in them, because it just, filmmakers are not loyal to anyone. Whatever makes their films easy, good for that. So if it's phone, if it's a spy camera, if it's a 35mm camera, we are not loyal people. Especially to mediums, especially to technology. We just want to use it to tell our stories in a more convincing manner, to reach out to more people, and to do it more authentically. That's my personal take on this debate, because anything which facilitates people is good. Anything which gets more people to make films is good. Anything which gets more people to watch films is good. I feel that.
No, I completely agree with you. I think the thing that you're saying about, more people making films, that's the thing that excites me the most, that I get to see such different perspectives, extremely personal perspectives that come with, that are coming with the phone. So I completely agree with you. But I have a question though, and this is as somebody who is trying to write scripts of their own. It's a question to all of you, really, that because your films build up to this kind of explosion at the end, there is this moment where the viewer is just like, does not know how they got to that point, because it was so organic, and to do that in such a short format, how do you go about doing that? I don't know if I'm communicating the question right. But when you have such a short span and you have to communicate this character going through so many different layers, how do you convincingly do that?
Actually, we are not convinced, I think. Just like देख लेंगे types, हो जाएगा.
Right.
Actually, you have to be a bit like, अरे कर लेंगे, हो जाएगा. But there are these moments where you don't know, you're not convinced. And it somehow comes together. Sometimes it doesn't. Like there's a possibility that it not, like it won't land, it won't speak to you also, like forget an audience, like but it's just that it's just about just getting out there and doing it. It's like a leap of faith. We do it not knowing what will happen, because sometimes like in cinema, you're using a new language. So 2 + 2 might not add 4, it's like it's like that. So, and always magic happens on set, and you're really actually really hoping that it does. Like, you're looking for that magic really, and somehow it lands. Like, like I don't want to tell the story for like when I was watching like Obur, for example, I wasn't like what happens towards the end. I was just like, what the fuck, and how has this been done? Like, it was like not just an emotion. Like the first time, of course, it was like this emotional wow moment, and the second time also it was a technical wow moment. That, oh fuck, like this. Because the first time you just watch it like this virgin, and the second time you watch it like with like, for technical reasons as a student. So, but really you don't know unless it happens. I'm sure like maybe Faraz can tell you better, like, that he also probably it just happened, like.
I'll share something. So I watched all the films really early on because I was working on the posters. So
The posters are beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
क्या मेरा रह गया अभी एक
Huh, so I'm still working on Arjuna's poster. Yeah. So Amrita, my wife, and I, we watched all the films really early on, and but I wanted to make sure that I finish my edit, and that is when I get to watch all of them. And when I finished watching all the films, I sat for a while and I thought to myself that, and that was not an instinctive, like, instant reaction after watching the film. Like, you close the book and then you think, oh, this is the takeaway. I think all the films stayed for a couple of days, and especially Somu's film. I called Somu, I think I didn't call him that very night when I watched it. I called him the other day. And I felt that there was just something about his film that just stays with you, and that takes me back to the experience of watching films where we actually used to watch most of it in the theater, and how most films would dismiss us, because when we watch film, it's a huge phenomena that changes. The sun sets, sun rises, we enter at 3 p.m., we come out, and the sunset has happened, and in those 3 hours you see lifetime of a person. And while you are going to the parking, you get in a car or you take a rickshaw, go back home for a number of days that you live. It just stays with you. Some films, they just stay with you, and some films that you just don't like instantly, but they you live it for a very long time. And what is so special with the 4 films that I watched, that they stay with you. When I watched Pratik's film, I the bell was just ringing in my head for a very long time, with exactly in that same BPM and that meter, more than the song. The song is phenomenal, but more than the song, it was just the bell. When I saw Saurav's film, I thought that the innocence of the kids are just so powering over the form or anything of cinema. Like, I'm so suspended into enjoying the film that I'm not really micro looking at that, how technically he must have constructed, or how difficult it must have been to go to such a remote place and be shooting in so windy environment. And so with Archana's film, when I watched it, I was completely in an awe of how she dismissed me. So I feel that most films, the way they dismissed us as viewer, that was very impactful. And I think that is not something that you can curate. That is a confluence of maybe a experience impact of lifetime that we all have been living with, be it the beating politics that you see in Jaltu Jalaltu, be it a slice of life or the complexity of relationship that you see it in A New Life, or be it the experience, or just something in a digital age. When we take something like gaming in a rural place like Rajasthan, what is the relevance of it, and how most of these minds are completely captured by phones. And when you see all of them, I feel that you cannot curate it, you cannot really construct it to give that end impact, or like, let's have that moment of like, let's sign it off. I just feel that most of us, while we were constructing the film, specifically I can speak about myself, I wanted to keep it really simple. And because because as I said, that kids in the candy shop, like, I really didn't have too much of pressure that would there be viewers for it, how will I find sales, would there be a theatrical for it. I was like, I'm just shooting it on iPhone, stakes are really low, and I'm putting it, let me just do one thing, let me just break the first format of writing, which is exposition. Let me not tell people anything about my character in the first act. Let people come to know about his life in the last act. And that's what happens, that you come to know everything about Supu, his actual surrounding, friends, everything towards the end. His liking with that, whether he likes cake, whether he had happy birthdays, whatever, everything that you come to know towards the end and not at the beginning of it. The kind of freedom that we had, it could just really give us the possibility of playing around with the form. And I think when that has happened, maybe it gives that kind of impact that you are talking about.
Right, right.
I think also one thing that stands out from all of your films, and I was telling you guys earlier as well, that all of you chose these landscapes and these spaces that add a lot of texture to the story. Even though these might not be landscapes that you guys yourselves come from, but these are landscapes that you were possibly fascinated by. Can you just all talk about that? How you chose these landscapes, how you went there, and how important is the space and the setting of the story itself in order to really put forward the idea that you want to tell. Saurav, can we start with you, especially because in your film, I think it's possibly the most important, and it is about the borders itself, and it's about how landscapes and ethnicities, regions, these change everything for people, and depending on, and how sometimes we are so privileged that we don't even realize what people who are at the margins are going through. You're muted, Saurav.
I think like initially we thought about like shooting in actual locations like across border in a space like where I wanted to make it very hardcore realistic, like that's where I felt this medium was perfect. That's the reason why we chose to feature this particular film. So, but having said that, as the permission were going overboard and it will take years and years to different countries permission, but I also realized, like, in a higher mountains, like the borders are specifically very small, where the checkposts are very less intimidating. And that's how, like, we explored and we realized it does make, like, it will give more space in terms of, time. Of course, it won't be a hush hush like a very realistic scenario, but at the same time, the mountains, the mist, the snow will add to the texture, layers of the overall, film and of course the characters. So yeah, I was blessing these guys like to not get permission initially in the real locations, but and to setting up those borders in unknown territory between two countries. Yeah, it was a different experience.
For us, in your film, you go to Kashmir, and of course, just the whites of the snow kind of become the backdrop of your entire film, and it makes the film what it is, and it takes you in truly the melancholy and the tragedy of what this child is going through, but at the same time keeping his innocence alive. How did you come about at the landscape, and how you wanted to shoot the story?
I always wanted to make a film about internet because it's just so fascinating that in the times that we live in, uh, the memories that we all have and now they have slowly become data, and that thought really stayed in my mind that how can I observe the idea of nostalgia of memory, but in contemporary times, whereas it's considered as data. And I was thinking of mounting it in the milieu where it it is beautiful yet very harsh, and that's where Kashmir came into picture. And also, I won't go to elaborate into explaining why, but it's very difficult to not associate Kashmir and internet, and especially the absence of internet and certain, certainly in that backdrop, what it means. I think it's very, very, observant in the film if you think of it. So it really made sense that for me to take the film in that milieu, where in the starkness of white, where you see the electric wires and the radio towers, where they completely get camouflaged and covered with the snow, and you have this boy who is actually confused with the concept of cloud, that whether it's a cloud which is a cloud in the essence, like really a cloud, or it is the one with that rest of the people are talking around him. And in general also, it really fascinates me, like even in my first film Shoebox, like I was very excited to see how the atmosphere around us impacts the social fabric of a particular place. So over here, I thought that how just a internet shutdown because of a cloud burst or many other reasons can just be so impactful to a place like Kashmir. And it started to feel more rewarding when we started living there, because we realized that these are the real problems of Kashmir. Like when you go to Kashmir, and if you have a prepaid SIM, it won't really work in Kashmir. You have to take a new number, and so many things. Like we face electricity problems. We could not really back up our data, whatever dailies that we were shooting, because it takes about 2 to 3 hours to back up about 4 TB of data, and we would really never find that kind of stable electricity. So all of that started to make sense, that something which appears like an urban privilege could be so rare to find in a remote place like Kashmir, where while we live in Bombay and we live in the luxury of having 24/7 electricity and a high speed data internet that we use to speak right now, I don't think so. I would have been so comfortably done it while being in a remote place in Kashmir. So thinking about memory, which we call data, how it feels to mount it in a rural place where it is still a luxury, that really excited me. In Kashmir, it made more sense to do it. And somewhere I also felt I always wanted to go to Kashmir and do a slice of life, like human story. And I was extremely unhappy the way most of us filmmakers have been mounting stories in Kashmir. It's so hard to not make a film without like militants in it. So I thought that let's just attempt a film which is about the Kashmiriyat. It's about just the people. Why can't we just think that there can be a wake up Sid in Kashmir? Like, why can't we? The best way to think of normalcy in Kashmir is to think that Kashmir is like Bombay, to make it a part of it, to make it to feel like that you can mount, say, like a love story. It can't just be limited to if you have singing and dancing, go to Kashmir, or if you have an underlining moment of a blast that is happening, go to Kashmir. It could be just a slice of life. It could just be a tender relationship between a mother and a son that can be mounted. So one more reason that more so ever that I really wanted to go to Kashmir and shoot it was just to have Kashmir as a backdrop, as the slice of life kind of story.
Pratik, you've taken your film and you shot inside an actual factory. और obviously मतलब आप और ऊपर से in this case you were shooting on a phone. मतलब काफी बार तो एक ये भी होता है ना कि मतलब when you start thinking about the aesthetics of a film, you start thinking about the visual imagery and all of that. An Indian factory doesn't necessarily fit into that bill, right? तो जब आपने डिसाइड किया कि आप एक फैक्ट्री के अंदर शूट कर रहे हो, सबसे पहले आपने कैसे डिसाइड किया कि वन, how exactly you're going to get the look of the film right, so that especially when you're shooting on a phone, it doesn't end up looking unpleasing in the way that the viewer is generally accustomed to seeing a film as unpleasing. And second, how exactly did you choose the factory? How exactly did you do the recce for this film? Can you talk just about that a little bit? Pratik, mute.
सच सच बोलूं तो मैंने पहले लोकेशन ढूंढनी, फिर स्क्रिप्ट लिखी.
अच्छा.
That's the truth. I just knew that we wanted a sequence of people laughing inside a factory.
Understood.
We weren't hell-bent on what kind of factory do we want. We're saying a lot of people working together and a laughter spree triggers. That this is what your idea is, and you're looking at what is that space where this looks good, or it sort of grounds the film, because that was very important for the film. That laughter had to work, and a laughter without any agenda, a laughter without any forewarning, a laughter for no reason. So, but that had to stop work. So it was very important for me to have a factory which was working, which employed a lot of people, and which the good thing about this factory, it was part mechanized, part through hand, and it had different spaces which were interconnected. So architecturally, it was great for us, and so that we could devise shots and connect spaces and have a lot of movement. We wanted to have a lot of movement. So for me, the space became kind of the paramount driving force of how you now put the story here or play it out. but also then you look for a house which has to connect. It's easy to go into drudgery here. I think when you say, no, how do you make sure it's not pleasing or it's pretty. See, तो देखने वाले की आंख में है ना यार, रस तो देखने वाले में होता है ना, मतलब सामने जो है उसमें नहीं होता है. सो वो बहुत जरूरी है कि हाउ एम आई कंस्ट्रक्टिंग दिस स्पेस. इट्स नॉट अबाउट कि सीमेंट निकल रहा है या वो है. एज लॉन्ग एज इट्स लुक्स लाइक अ डिग्निफाइड वर्किंग स्पेस, as long as a neighborhood looks dignified and we're not going into, for me it's a problem when we go into drudgery and we want to go into drains and the filth of a neighborhood or a basti. For me, I wanted that their house next to a big urban settlement, which could be a flyover, which could be a metro, so that when I look at him from outside, he's not disconnected from this world, and it sort of says कि हाँ ये अब ये वाली दुनिया उसके उधर है, ये के इधर रहते हैं, those kind of things. For me, it was very important that factory जो भी है वो underground है. So first shot that man goes in, when he's going home, he comes up. So for me, it's very important कि ये ground के नीचे होता है. ये लोग बाहर नहीं आते, अंदर सेंस ऑफ टाइम नहीं है, कौन कब घर जा सकता है कब नहीं जा सकता. देयर इज नो रूल टू दिस. So all those kind of things you want as a director, it doesn't always come through to the viewer, but these are our own driving sort of logics of setting the space. Location for me is essential. Location actors in films like this become very, very important, I think, in all films. But just to make sure that our actors are not standing out against the people who are working there. And how do you go about familiarizing space in that sense? How do you put, where do people eat in this? If people can eat anywhere in a big factory, right? Why do you choose a staircase and things like that? So those kind of questions become important. This is how we want to see what is a space offering to us, and then move on, especially given the constraints that we were working with. I think this was a good way to go. So yeah, these were the, I don't know if I answered your questions,
No, no.
but yeah.
Yeah. Archana?
So actually, I could have set the film anywhere. I honestly wanted to make a film about withdrawal, not about addiction. Like you don't know you're addicted until you withdraw, right? So, but then the desert became a important thing because I like the idea of the desert and the absence of things. When you think about the deserts, you think isolation, you think nothingness, things like that. So, and I'm interested in how you can represent emotions of a character through the space that they occupy. So, for me, it became kind of like I wanted to make a film about withdrawal. There was this kid that I had met on my vacation. So I thought, why not put these kind of two things together? It was important that I kind of observed their life and kind of incorporate it into the film, like these bunch of tourists who are always taking pictures, who are addicted to their phone in their own ways, kind of a thing. And then there is this kid who finds respite in it from his day job. And how we observe the desert in the day and in the night, really. And the turmoil inside him kind of taking shape and imagination taking shape in the night is something that I was kind of interested in doing. I don't know if it has again happened, but that this is what I was looking for: the desert in the day and the desert in the night, and this like really the insides, whatever's happening inside him, this withdrawal kind of showing through the storm or that happens there and things like that. So the desert became a very actually important part of the way I wanted to tell this particular story. So yeah, so that's why Jaisalmer was.
Why did you specifically think of a gaming addiction?
It wasn't really a game. Like, actually that's the thing. So I didn't with a child, like it was just that they play this game, the PUBG or Frontline or Frontier or whatever, so these are the spaces where they kind of, and because these kids can't, they're working kids, their only way to kind of, there's no water there, like in the sense, like, they clean the plates with the sand, but there is internet and then there is phone. This is something that everyone has, like, even in this space, sort of a thing. So that idea was something that kind of fascinated me, that this child plays on the phone with his other friend, and that's his escape, and that's his way to kind of play in a place where he's supposed to work. And like it's not very obviously put in there, but from the very beginning, everyone's on their phone in the whole film.
Hmm.
Tourists are always taking pictures of each other, कुछ sunset दिख गया उसका photo ले रहे हैं or something like this. So it was, the phone was kind of present everywhere. It's just that this child was, for him, the phone meant gaming. It didn't mean WhatsApp, it didn't mean emails, it didn't mean watching Netflix. For him it was that, and that's what I kind of chose. If I was making an adult story, maybe it would be something else.
It's interesting that between your and Faraz's film, in your film, the conflict comes from the fact that there is way too much of a presence of the internet. While in Faraz films, the conflict is coming from the absence of it.
Yeah.
And they are these two extremely contrasting landscapes, especially. And it's interesting that both these films exist as a part of the same,
We realized that later, like both of us also, like, oh, like, our film has similar kind of, at the same time, they're very different. Oh, wow, Somu's come in the bus.
of our landscapes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, I was late for the mix. I'm here doing the mix for the feature. I directed, and I
Don't
to be
apologize,
on
Somu. This is amazing. You're giving us like variation in
Yeah,
location.
and especially it's taking me back to your film only. Back in the going around. But yeah, can you just take us through the process of choosing the landscapes of the film and choosing the spaces and the locations where you wanted to set it?
Our film is in a way about the connect and the disconnect. So that is enabled by the phone, in the context of the relationship of husband and wife.
Yeah.
And and we were always kind of sort of structuring the film around video calls. So we wanted to kind of have this have two cities that were far apart, and that the husband leaving the wife, just the larger the distance, the more questions it raises about why that distance is there between the husband and wife. I mean, he could have, why didn't he find a job closer home? Why is he going so far away? So he's, rationalizing it by saying it's better for the family. It's, it's a job opportunity that he's got in Bangalore, but then the wife catches hold of that it's just not logical what he's thinking. So that kind of brought out the slight differences in how husband and wife are thinking, and maybe guess at other aspects that maybe the husband himself is not consciously willing to acknowledge, that is this an escape from something he's not ready for yet. But the choice of Bangalore and Calcutta was quite simple. I'm born and brought up in Bangalore, and my wife is born and brought up in Calcutta. So we actually shot the film in real time in two different cities, so two different units. So the WhatsApp conversations were shot in real time in Calcutta and Bangalore at the same time.
Nice.
So
yeah, I thought the cultural confluence was so interesting because I mean it is obviously there's nothing shocking about it, but still probably we haven't seen like a Bengali person in a Bangalore setup before, and I think it just kind of gave a very interesting texture.
yeah, I mean Bangalore is also a city of migrants in a way, because I think even within the film we have Malayalam, we have Hindi, we have Kannada, we have English, we have Bengali.
That's what.
So
The scene with the doctors, the both of them speaking to each other in Kannada.
Yeah.
Ahona, we were speaking about the grading of the films and the coloring.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, all of them have such, again, I mean, you were talking about texture. All of them have such interesting texture because of the way the films are. I mean, not just colored, right? The way each shot is structured. I mean, at the risk of like, I don't want to ruin the film for anyone, but Archana, your film, there is one shot where the camera just kind of intently focuses on the face of the boy, and he kind of like he looks back,
Yeah.
you know, almost piercing the person who's looking at him, like piercing through the viewer. Yeah, how did you go about composing those?
And yeah, especially also what you were speaking about earlier about how the grading probably becomes so important, and we as laymen don't even realize
Yeah, exactly.
when there is a limitation when it comes to the shooting device. How important does the DI and the coloring aspect of it? How important does that become?
I think I mean, definitely really, really important because you can really like dictate mood, of course, with colors, But at the same time, like for me, it was a really important thing because I did this decision of shooting with iPhone in the night with no lights in a space that doesn't have any kind of light at all except moonlight. Like we were shooting in the middle of the desert, so there are no like lights, nothing. And we were shooting like this crazy ISOs. Like the native ISO of the iPhone is like I think 80, but we were shooting at 1600, thinking ho jayega, kuch kar lenge, sort of a thing. So that's where I came up with this device of using just the torchlight, just what the torchlight kind of sees, kind of a thing. But this was something that I discussed heavily with Mehek, who has colored the film, and we did a lot of tests, and so that like for it was important that we keep the images very high contrast so that the focus is in one place. So I have actually killed all the details in the black to come just on that spotlight sort of a thing. But this is a decision that we came up like with the colorist, like the form was kind of born out of, again, the disadvantages we were at, the weaknesses we were at. So the form was born out of the fact that अच्छा यार ये हो नहीं पाएगा तो क्या करें, how will this serve the story really. So that's where my colorist really kind of came into the picture, where she said, कुछ भी हो जाए ऐसे करो, and then you were like, okay fine, then let's use it like this, sort of a thing. And I wanted the film to have just the blue of the sky and the browns of the desert. This is what I really wanted, and that's where like other things also come into play, like what costume you choose. Like my main character is wearing this blue patani. So, but these are the colors that I had chosen. But then Mehek came up with a look for the film. She gave us like the LUT so that we knew exactly what we were filming. It's like that, like the grade. I think for us, will give a good answer to this too.
I think we all are very, very fortunate to have graded all our films at Bridgepost Work. Let's just start with that, because they stand for a quality and an experience also for the filmmakers. It's not like because you go with a short film shot on iPhone, you will not get that many hours to grade there. So I feel that the attention to details to each project, that was phenomenal, which was extended by Bridgepost Work. Talking about the process, I feel that every film has a visual similitude, and the colors and the texture and the grains that ties and gives you an experience that doesn't break in between beat. And that's not just done visually but also by sound, say by Foley, by the diegetic kind of wind that you have in the film. The kind of wind that you have in Archana's film is very different from the kind of wind that you hear in my film. The spaces are very different. So right from the beginning we decided on, because we were constantly hopping geography. We have a shop, then we have a small village, then we have a stable in the shop, in the village, and then we also have and in contrast to a big city somewhere in Kashmir, which looks like a city that has moved ahead in time, where you see these solar panels and those red hearts and murals on the wall, and then you have an internet cafe. So because we realize that we have so many locations that we are constantly jumping, we needed to tie it also, because sometimes colors, besides evoking certain emotions, it's also a nice glue to your overall visual experience, that it doesn't throw you out. And hence every film comes with a certain vocabulary. Say like a Matrix would have a certain tint, and different films would have certain grain. So we realized that we were facing unique problem, because where Archana's film had lack of light, because she had a lot of night sequences, we had abundance of light. We were dealing with lights which were hitting on the snow and bouncing back. So we were thinking, how can we cut the light? And that's when the whole process started with Mehak, and she and Anand, who's our DP. We decided on certain colors, say like a marine blue or a red, and these are also the diegetic colors of Kashmir. So we also need to realize that when you are on a certain budget and you have to grade your film really well, grade is not something, a magic that you create purely in post, but it's also some of the decisions that you take beforehand. And we did fair amount of research. I remember Anand showed me some of the photo series of a few photographers, and he asked me that, why can't we use these colors against blue, because we have had enough of grays and black, and overall our geography is going to look little monochromatic when we go in the Chilai Kalan kind of weather in Kashmir, where everything will be. So let's just use happy colors. Let's just go for marine. Let's just go for reds. Let's go for yellow and orange. And right from that point, a philosophy for the colors was decided, that while we are telling this tale which is melancholic in its tone, but visually we don't need to follow it. Visually we can pump it more mood and more fun in it, and hence we included, like Archana said, she has this duck egg blue in the kurta of the protagonist in her film. We gave a more deeper color because we were against completely stark white of the geography. So hence all of that, be it the size of the grain, intensity of it, and everything, it came in picture. And Mehak really gives that kind of mood or touch to the film that, as an experience, it ties it all so well, and it supports the narrative. It's not about, like, she doesn't lean towards stylizing an image, but it's about how do you feel about the image.
Saurav, do you have anything to add to this about how important the coloring of the film was for you, and in order to really get the kind of visual output that you needed?
It was a process, I would say, when we started the grade. We said, like, earlier we went for a warmer palette, like, it was looking beautiful, but Sid was like more than generous enough to say, "Ki, go sit over it, like, what do you think about it?" Then it was like, after 2 3 days, I went again, then thought about it and realized, no, it's going against the philosophy of the whole, the conflict, what's going on. So rather than one particular look which we arrived at, is a constant process which Sid uh, carefully guided us also, and the final version is absolutely like there, like it kind of exactly portrays what we want, so it was a process, yeah, a big process.
Okay. I think just let's kind of we are heading towards the end of the conversation. I think just want to ask one question that is slightly different from the conversation that we've been having until now. I would love to know if you can recommend just a few films for our viewers. Just maybe talk about maybe 1 or 2 or 3 films that have probably had a deep influence on you over the years, which you think that more people need to watch. Of course, मतलब हम सबकी मतलब बहुत लंबी लंबी लिस्ट होती हैं ये वाली, पर just 2 3 films that you hold the closest to your heart, which you think that more people need to watch.
मुश्किल क्वेश्चन क्यों पूछते हैं यार?
ये सबसे
You know, we always ask this question and everybody gives us the same response, that this
So
is
if
like,
you
this
want
is a
to
trick
ask for
question.
recommendation, there are 4 filmmakers here. I recommend all of their films very, very. Really, I mean, you watch Placebo and you watch About Love, and between Nimto and Guras, and the kind of film Somos is shot, and I'm sure if you see any of his short films, and for us, I think these are the kind of, I think sometimes as a young filmmaker or an aspiring filmmakers, we tend to get fascinated by the Tarkovskys and the Bergmans, and that intimidates you. I think it's very important
Right.
to look around you what is happening, because that's not intimidating. Because you see people are if they can do it, why can't we do it kind of attitude. Because when I look at the Tarkovsky, I think, okay, this requires a Soviet Union to do this here. I don't have a Soviet Union. What do I do? So those, obviously there's some great films which we've like all loved. For me, if you ask me personally, Close Up by Kiarostami is one of my all-time favorites, and I think it is to me, that ended the whole debate about digital film, non-fiction, fiction in 1988. So, I find these conversations sometimes. I think Kirastami would be laughing at all of us from heavens, from the cinematic heavens, for indulging into these conversations 30 years later. But yeah, I feel that is a very, very special film for me personally, and I keep going back to it. And on the other extreme, I wouldn't. It's difficult to pinpoint one film, but Ritvik Ghatak as a filmmaker, I think the way he uses sound and uses that unabashed disdain for the rules of filmmaking. No, I really like that, because that he's looking at an emotion, what the medium can do to evoke an emotion and not get tied up with the medium. So that, I think, it takes it by the scruff of the neck and sort of puts it out there. And it's not very polished, but it cuts you at places. It's sharp. So I think that is something I really like about films. And I think Ecstasy of Woodcutter Steiner by Herzog. I think I saw a man fly on that film without any special effects, and that was one of the most exhilarating moments for me when, as a student, when on the first shot the man flies, and he's flying. So I think it's one of the most memorable moments, because you felt something which you haven't felt before. It's a short 40-minute film, but it is very close to, when I think about what things have impacted, that was one.
Just want to mention, you mentioned Placebo. I saw it recently actually, and it really, really shook me. What a film! I think truly, like, more people need to watch Placebo. And I've been thinking that I'm going to.
I'll send you the link. I've edited that.
Yeah, I know. But it's on YouTube. The film is on YouTube.
Yeah, I know. Somebody has put it.
No, Abhay only has uploaded it. It's been uploaded by Abhay only.
Okay.
On his YouTube. But yeah, what a film. Archana, you want to recommend some films?
Actually, like Pratik said, there are too many, and like you can't really. And Kiarostami's all his films should be, of course, watched. And but in recent times, there are some films that have really deeply affected me. One of them being Happy as Lazaro, which I think is a 2018 film. That's I really like that a lot. Actually, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is my all-time favorite film. um that one. Then there was this film called On Body and Soul. um uh, I think it's a very special film, and I think, again, like in recent times, I'm telling you, there are too many great films, and but these are some things that, and this film by Celine Sciamma called Petite Mama, I really
Right. Yeah. Wonderful film. Yeah.
So these are my favorites in recent times. Yeah.
Faraz?
Again, it's a very, very, very difficult question to answer. I really don't know where to start from. Like, I think to answer this, like, maybe the question would have been more specific, like recent films, or like
Maybe just, the 2-3 films that have probably been with you for the longest time, that have probably left the deepest impact on you personally.
I'll tell you some of the films that I keep watching. That'll be I wouldn't, and that doesn't mean like these are the only favorite films, but there are these films that I like at least once after 2-3 months. I'll always visit them, or I'll keep going back to. That includes this film called Mon Uncle by Tati. And I feel that I just absolutely everything about that film, the humor and the design and everything. And when I saw a little bit of Pratik's film, and I told him that if Tati was making a film today in India in a factory, he would make Jaltu Jalaltu, because it is political, but it's just that the physical humor is too and the graphic and the design is just something so inspiring for all of us. Like I keep going back to see the symmetry and the architecture, the set and everything, and yet with all the absurdity that you see in the film, there's a sense of realism that makes it very immersive for you to experience Mon Uncle. the second film that I keep going back to is Fitzcarraldo, and I feel that it's purely when I feel really bad about everything that's going around me. It's a therapy to watch that, because I feel like, if he has done that, I feel that we have no really complaints to go to, because like when you see him, and it's like back to back, like when you see that and then you think of Burden of Dreams and you put it all together, it puts you in a place where you feel that all of that Herzog says, it really makes sense, because when we are out there, we have to do the doable. All of that really starts to make sense. That when we sit and when we begin to complain that there are no producers, then you think that when you see Fitzcarraldo, you start to realize that him speaking to you, that if there are no producers, become a producers. If there is no festival, become a festival. If there is no equipment, get an iPhone and you shoot it. So it's just, this becomes one of those films where it becomes a therapy in as a part of those times. And all or everything that Herzog has done, Agira, the Wrath of God, and also Kiarostami, personal favorite. I feel the entire Cooker trilogy is something that I keep watching. I keep watching Where Is Your Friend's Home. I feel that the basic design, the plot, the simplicity of it, and yet it is so immersive. So yeah, these are some of the filmmakers that I keep going back to. I keep going back to Ray as well. I remember I watched his films much later in life. It's not like I started watching it and that happened during when I went for film appreciation and FTI. It was raining, last show 7 p.m. Went to the theater to watch it, and I had not known that it's going to impact me so badly. Like when that sequence happens when he discovers that Durga had. I'm not going to, like, those who have not seen, I'm not going to give a major plot point in it, but I feel that everything that Ray did with the simplicity of it and economizing how you tell stories, so that impresses me the most. That in all these filmmakers, that how they when they buy out your time to give your experience, how they are so certain about and they are so conscious about putting that every second or that every moment that feed to you.
Yeah, also आई नो ये मतलब बहुत ऐसे हाई प्रेज टाइप की लगेगी आपको, लेकिन मैं बहुत ऑनेस्टी के साथ आपको बता रहा हूँ, व्हेन आई सॉ योर फिल्म इट truly took me back to all the times when I'd seen like a children's film from Iran, and it moved me and it shook me. And I truly feel like the film that you have made it's a film that's going to be seen and rewatched for years to come. It's truly that special, and especially the way in which you have just told this story of an innocent child, while of course packing so many layers in it. It's very rare to see a film like this, and I really think that it's really up there for me personally, the way that moved me. And it really just kind of made me feel the way that I felt when I saw Where Is the Friend's Home for the first time, or Children of Heaven for the first time. Saurav?
I think I was just talking to some friends about like the list of favorite films. I realized like most of them are like has to do with children, like I can just count it like Ken Loach's Chess, the first movie. It's all time favorite. Uh, Kikijuro by Takeshi Kitano, Fond et Book by Truffaut, and of course all the film feature like which Kurosami did. And apart from this, there's one particular film which a Kazakh film which I love to the core, like Tumpan, and then this goes on and on. Yeah.
Yes, Soumya? Are you still in the bus?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, that's about to get off actually. Yeah, but one of the most special things about being an SPI when I was a student is just walking into a theater and discovering a film, and there's the favorites that you go back to again and again. So in that way, maybe the films I've returned to the most would be Ozu's Tokyo Story, Close Up, but also films that I've chanced upon without knowing anything about it beforehand. And I recently watched Stories We Tell by Sarah Polley, and it completely opened my mind about a kind of very intimate family storytelling. also blurring the lines between documentary and fiction in very exciting ways. And I've been hugely affected by Mike Leigh, especially in the way that he um, uh, explores human relationships. Eric Romer, also for the same reason. But yes, it's an ongoing list. But I'm always excited for going into a film without knowing anything about it and then suddenly being blown away.
But actually, like on a side note, मेरे को सौम्य की अभी footage देख तो ऐसा लग रहा है कि हम एक हॉन्ग सांग सू की फिल्म देख रहे हैं. But guys, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, like truly moved by all of your films. I generally I haven't done like a Zoom interview in a very long time, but I especially told Abhishek that I really wanted to do this just because I mean, these films really need to be seen by more people, and I really hope that they get discovered by more and more people in the months and years to come.
And I think what Soumya was saying really applies to all of these films as well. The idea that you don't know where this film is going to take you, and then you're completely blown away by it, right? I mean, all of these films have that quality about them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Any parting notes?
Yeah. If you like our work, let us make anthology. We all are looking for. We are ready with our scripts. Looking for producers, looking for people to fund our ideas. This is just one of. We have just managed to scratch the surface, but all of us, are more than willing to work.
Film recommendation.
Oh yeah, please.
I think The Great Dictator, man, very important.
Oh
very
yeah,
relevant, very important, timeless, prophetic, warning. We should just have a lot of screenings of that film right now, I feel.
that's true. That's very true. On that note, this is Harshit and Ahona, and thank you so much everyone for watching the video, and please go watch the films if you haven't already.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.